Without further ado, I will turn it over to Randy. Randy, thank you so much for helping us out today and sharing what you know about this awesome topic.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Going to go ahead and steal presenter and share my screen now. So let me know if we can see the NetSuite 101 topics.
I can see it.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of NetSuite 101. So going over sort of the core pieces of what makes NetSuite a powerful solution. Hopefully this introduces a lot of you guys to the power of what NetSuite can bring to your organization. And if you already know about all of these things and you're already on NetSuite, hopefully I give you a couple little tips and tricks or a nice little refresher about why you went with NetSuite in the first place. So we're going to start, we're going to talk about the three core pillars. We're going to talk about foundational structure. This is things like chart of accounts, subsidiaries, segments. We're going to talk a little bit about financial and operational reporting, and then we're going to talk about safe searches. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So the foundational structure of NetSuite. So the way that I like to talk about NetSuite and building an ERP system is like you're putting together a house or a car, either one of those metaphors, whichever one you like better. The foundation, the engine, the suspension, the support, it all comes from these three areas, right? Subsidiaries, your chart of accounts, and your segmentation. The reason why we talk about these is because, like I said, it's the backbone of the system foundation, and it is also very simple to set up. So you can take this very simply, or you can make it very complex. And either way that you decide to go, it will flex with you, it will grow with you, and it will allow you to do what you want to do. There's a reason that NetSuite has so many different micro verticals that we support, from food and beverage to nonprofit to wholesale distribution and manufacturing. It's because of this sort of core foundation and how flexible it is. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into a little demo here on the core pieces of the NetSuite system. So I'm going to use an administrator role today. Obviously, it's not always the prettiest and most designed view in NetSuite, but for talking about foundational areas, the admin role is really the best one to go from. So let's start with subsidiaries, because if you're going through a NetSuite build, you always start with your subsidiaries first. So the power of NetSuite subsidiaries is to allow you to have multiple company level hierarchies that all roll up into one consolidated parent and allow you to run separate tax ID businesses within the same software platform. This allows for reporting to be consolidated. It allows for users to all be seeing the same thing, and easier company training and easier company layout. So the thing that I really like about NetSuite subsidiaries is that creating them and creating the list for them is extremely simple. So when you're building your subsidiary tier, NetSuite displays it as an actual tier. So you can see what subsidiaries roll up to what companies. This is really great because a lot of other ERP systems, a lot of legacy ERP systems do these things as numbers. And you never really know what number rolls up to what other number. It's not very visual. It's not very user-friendly. And coming to a system that's like this, that's more user-friendly, where we can run these reports and we can view in our UI how subsidiaries work and how one is related to the other, really gives us a much easier path forward to building the foundational structure of the system. Now, I could sit and talk about subsidiaries, and each one of these topics we're discussing today, I could talk for probably 2 or 3 hours on each of them. So, I'm going to try not to do that. So the last thing I want to say about subsidiaries before we sort of move on to chart of accounts is that it really does give you quite a bit of power in terms of how you do your organizational setup. Because while these things are great for separate tax IDs and everything else, the flexibility of having different financial statements for different subsidiaries, what NetSuite calls subsidiaries, gives you the power to do all kinds of things with running multiple companies' books for things like property management, or let's say that you have two arms of a nonprofit and you have a for-profit arm and a nonprofit arm that roll up. These are all things that subsidiaries can do as opposed to just the classic concept of a parent and child company setup. So next we're going to talk about the chart of accounts. And everything else aside, the chart of accounts is really the cement layer of your system. Every accounting system on earth, going back hundreds of years, runs on a chart of accounts, runs on journal entries, and we have a cash account and a receivables account and a payables account, things like that. So what differentiates NetSuite from other accounting systems? What makes NetSuite so powerful? It's the fact that we have different options for how you run your chart of accounts and how you run the different options. Once again, I'm going to go back to legacy ERP systems where in order to identify your locations, your subsidiaries, your departments, your product lines, you had to have an account string that was 10 digits long, 20 digits long, 30 digits long. And it blew your chart of accounts into this monstrous 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 line layer that was really untenable, unmanageable, and made life miserable for anyone who's ever had to deal with it. I've had to do lots and lots of data conversion from those systems coming into NetSuite, and I've personally never understood how people did their jobs with that. So when you look at the numbering structure in NetSuite and you look at our chart of accounts, you can see some great things. Like we have an account number, right? Everybody has an account number. So what makes NetSuite better? Well, we can do 4 numbers, we can do 6 numbers, and then you can mix and match these with a system ID to your number so that when you're looking for accounts, when you're trying to run reporting, when you're trying to do other things, right? If you don't know like the specific number, you can use the name, you can use the internal ID, right? You can use the types. So NetSuite really gives you this highly filterable and very user-friendly way to structure and look at your chart of accounts, while at the same time simplifying them from what you might see in an existing system. The other thing that's really powerful is you can see I'm just in my chart of accounts list, and I can see some of the really simple data that I need to run my business, right? What's my account number? What's the name? What's the type, right? What balances are in my accounts? Do I have a foreign currency balance? Do I have a standard balance, right? So these things make it very quick for power users to see the information that they need relating to their chart of accounts. And once again, it does function like any other accounting system from any other point in time in terms of giving us the capability to do as few or as many accounts as we want within the system. So as you see in this environment, we do have a fixed assets, we've accumulated depreciation, right? We have credit cards and other assets and accruals, as well as our liabilities. So it gives you the power to have all of these accounts. But what you don't see in here that we'll talk about in a minute is we don't have to have an account for every single product line. We don't have to have an account for the marketing department's version of revenue versus the engineering department's version versus the professional services. That's all handled outside of the chart of accounts in NetSuite, which once again makes the user experience and the ability to run your system on a day-to-day basis much, much easier. So how do we do that, right? How do we get from that old chart of accounts look to using NetSuite to give us those product lines, to give us those things? Well, we use something called segments. And NetSuite has out of the box 3 different kinds of segments. We have what we call departments, and departments relate to classic cost centers. We have classes, and most people use classes in the classic profit center mindset. So product lines or lines of business, or projects and programs. And then we have locations, which function sort of a dual role as where my office is physically located to book accounting expenses against, as well as inventory management, such as warehouses, third-party manufacturers, etc. So when I look at NetSuite and I look at, let's take our classes, so the classic profit center product lines. You can see in this particular account, this is a food and beverage account. So you can see different product lines here that we would track costs and expenses to, or costs and revenue to. And what this will allow us to do is run a P&L by each of our product lines, again, without having to run a full chart of accounts report. So instead of having to run a report and filter out 200 revenue accounts, because those accounts, I want to just see candy and snacks, and I don't want to have to filter out 200 other accounts in sales revenue because we've got them all that way. I can just run a report, and my report will show me just candy and snacks. Now, it's all well and good to talk about these things and look at these things in terms of lists and how they go here and there, but the core of NetSuite is a user-driven experience through the website. So I'm going to create a quick journal entry to show everyone on the phone just how simple it is to do all of this stuff. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to make a journal entry. Now, we all know journal entries. We've all had to take an accounting class in high school and college. A journal entry is really just a T count entry, right? What's my debit? What's my credit? So for all the people who aren't accountants, who might be a warehouse guy or a sales guy, trying to go through and maybe they have to enter a journal entry or a sales order or an item receipt, the whole power of NetSuite is its user interface. So if I need to enter a journal entry, right, I choose my subsidiary. Again, this is the backbone. My subsidiary defines a lot of what else is allowed in the system. It defines my currency, right, posting periods, etc. Then if I wanted to look at my account, right, and let's just make this sort of a classic revenue transaction. So I'm going to take the cash account, the checking account related to the subsidiary. Now, for my cost center, let's just say that we're giving, we want to give the revenue credit for this to marketing. And this is for candy and snacks, and it's in our Boston location. Okay. I have all this other information that I can add, and we can add a lot more columns since we have options for custom segments, for additional fields, additional forms, but that's not really, we don't really need to go into all of that today. But when I come through and I enter this information in the system and I choose my AR account, once again, I'm going to give it to marketing, look here, here, and then we're going to do this. Now, once I save this, I'm able to go and look at my GL impact of this transaction. And as you'll see in my accounts, right, it's posted to these accounts, it's done the debits and credits, and then it tagged all of this other information. Now, when I run a report, when I run a safe search, if I was to look at my account register, all of these tags that I put on here are going to drive the reporting, and I can filter by any of the things that I tagged just then and there, so that I can do reports on cash at Boston. I can do reports on how much has marketing made in terms of cash? What's the cash balance of my subsidiary? And I can add these things, I can subtract them, I can slice and dice them. So looking at NetSuite from a foundational standpoint, you can really see why this is powerful, because we can keep our chart of accounts simple. We can add complex metrics that we can then report on without having to have them in our string, so the individual user can select them, so that we can pre-build certain things, and so that we can add detail that we don't necessarily want to have to build out 50, 20, 40 different accounts within our chart of accounts. So once again, that's why NetSuite is a really powerful system in terms of your foundations. So I'm going to pause for 30 seconds to let people put in any QA questions they have on this, so that we can take a look at them at the end before I switch us back to the PowerPoint and we move on into the reporting section. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the next thing in our line. So reporting. So what do we consider reporting in NetSuite? Well, NetSuite reports are the financial reports, the operations reports, and custom reports. And the reason that we talk about reporting and why reporting matters is because this is what provides insight into all the different areas of your business, from your C-levels, your CEO, CFO, what do they need to see, to your controller, to your AP clerk, your AR clerk, all the way down to the guys in your warehouse who need to do inventory stocking, inventory counts, and things like that. And it's all driven off the same reporting engine, which means that anyone who can build a report can help anyone else build a report, as long as they have the correct roles and permissions too. The other powerful thing about NetSuite reports is that it's click, not code. And I tend to say this a lot because personally, from my background, it's very helpful. I've been using NetSuite for 15 years. I'm not a programmer. I've generated tens of thousands of reports. In the old days, on a lot of the legacy systems, when you needed a custom report built, or you needed a different way to slice your data or view certain things and pieces of information from your system, you had to go to an outside firm, and you had to pay someone to come in and code a report, whether it was SQL or C++, right? You could not just have a normal user log into their system, say, this is what I need to see, tap, 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 and get the information. So that's a really powerful thing about NetSuite reports. The other thing that's really great about them is the tiered level of the reports. Since NetSuite is a real-time data engine, and you can run a point-in-time report whenever you want to, or you can run for different date ranges, it allows you to view things as a tier. So from your P&L, your income statement, you can drive down to the accounts. You can drive down to the specific transaction. You can drive down into all these different levels within the tiers of the reporting. And that really gives you a lot of power and visibility into your business. And it's particularly helpful for those folks who deal with audits, because instead of having to, look at a report and then find the transaction number and then go into your file cabinet or go into an Excel sheet to print out the transaction, it's 3 clicks away. So the amount of time that it cuts down on audits is pretty phenomenal. It's how people are able to take month closes from 6 weeks down to 2 or 3 weeks to close periods. And again, it just depends on what your financial process looks like. So it's not a guarantee that I can get you to close your periods in 1 to 2 weeks. It depends on your internal processes, but as a tool, NetSuite is very helpful. So let's pop back into the NetSuite system and let's take a look at some of the reporting. So when I look at my reports in NetSuite, right, you can see that I have a lot of different areas of where I can run reports. And again, this is in an administrator role. So being in an administrator role, it gives us a lot more power and a lot of different things we can see. When these are tailored to specific users, it is going to limit the reports that they can see to what's important for their day-to-day job. For example, if I was an inventory person or a warehouse person, I wouldn't necessarily want to see our company-wide income statements. I don't necessarily need to see a cash flow statement or the general ledger, right? And so in that role, it's going to have more specific things, more links, and easier access to these different options. And we can customize roles and you can manage roles so that you can put sort of any information that's relevant to a particular role where you need it to be. We're going to start with our financial reports. Now, the NetSuite financial reports are just based on sort of standard income statements, balance sheets. They can be customized in terms of what you see on your left side, so your rows and how that works out. But starting from the base level, NetSuite has the a standard income statement, standard balance sheet. One of the powerful things about NetSuite is that when we have our segments aligned and we have our data points and our analytics, the column format in our financial reports allows us to view a lot of different options. So for example, if I wanted to see my subsidiary hierarchy in this report, you see that I have my amount that's been booked to just my parent company, my amounts booked in subsidiary 1, my amounts booked in subsidiary 2, and then my consolidated total. So again, this is what building a hierarchy allows you to do. And you can build a hierarchy in departments or classes or locations to allow you for tiered visibility, even here just looking at our standard income statement. Some of the other powerful things is the fact that we can build out an accounting period hierarchy. So our accounting period hierarchy will show you over the particular time frame that you have built out in the system of what it is on a month-to-month basis. So I know a lot of finance folks love this particular column view because it shows you what's my revenue on a period-to-period basis. What are my expenses in a particular area on a period-to-period basis? And again, we can also filter this in other ways. So I can filter this by class. So let's say I wanted to look at candy and snacks and beverages in a period format. This is, you see it changed my revenue numbers. So this is without really customizing this at all. This is straight through the user interface. This is just me logged in saying, hey, I need to see my data in a P&L format for this specific product line. So once again, very powerful for simple reports or complex reports. Now you can customize financial reports in NetSuite. The tool set for customizing financial reports is a little bit more complex than the standard one. So I do recommend some training or having worked with implementation consultants or partner consultants to help understand how to customize financial reports. The financial report builder does have a lot more options in terms of row layouts because most financial reports are based on certain reporting standards and metrics defined by states, countries, specific governments on what they need to see. So the tool set can support customization in terms of financial reporting, but we do a really good job of having a bunch of things built out in the system for a specific client in these different areas so that you don't have to customize your financial reports as much. Now, moving on from financial reports, sort of the next area we want to talk about is what I call business reports, or you could call operational reports. These are things like physical inventory worksheets, inventory profitability, your sort of, and you can use your aging reports and look at them either, financially or operationally, however you like to do it. Customer reporting is a big one. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look at my inventory profitability report, because I find that this is a really nice report to show the power of NetSuite. And I'm just going to go back a couple of months so we have more data in here. So this is a great report because it shows you the flexibility of and the power of looking at one of these reports. So this is an out-of-the-box report. Any account in NetSuite that supports inventory has an inventory profitability report out of the box from day one. So when you look through here, you can see a really quick snapshot of the most important information on an inventory profitability. How much has this item cost me? How much have I made off of it? What's my gross profit? So this is exceptionally helpful in terms of running a distribution business or a food and beverage business, anything that deals with product. The system really gives you these powerful reports out of the box that really change the game in terms of viewing and sending data internally throughout the organization. Now, one of the nice things about the operational reports or the non-financial reports is that they're very easy to customize. So once again, we go back to that concept I discussed of click, not code, when it comes to reporting. So if I customize this report, you can see that it's a much simpler interface than financial reports. And again, that's because financial reports usually have to be set up for a particular regulation or a particular government. But if I'm just building a report for myself and I want to add, well, let's see here, an item field. Let's say that I wanted to add in here what the costing method was for this item. So FIFO, LIFO, average. And I wanted to shift this in my report so that it was right next to my total cost. It's that simple. It's that simple. So now I can see that the costing method on most of these items is all average costing, right? If I had FIFO, LIFO, standard, or specific costing. So let's say I had lot numbers, I had serial numbers, and I was costing those and I was looking at those via specific costing. Then again, I can throw that in here. And now that I've put this column in here, this is a filter option I can use. So I can say, only show me my standard costs, only show me my specific costs, right? So very powerful, very easy to customize, and it's almost limitless in terms of what we can do with standard reports. Now, the nice thing about the standard reporting is the columnar format. So everything is laid out pretty simply. Our columns are coming straight from our transactions, our reports, and then it gives you the ability to dig down into them, right? So if I click on this, I can go straight into the item record itself. And again, this is when I talk about these things being tiered and having useful information, right? I can go straight down into my inventory item from the report. Or if I go back, let's say I wanted to see my detailed report on the total revenue for this item, right? Boom, I come right in, it has my item filter, and it has every transaction that I've run from November to today in terms of item profitability on what transaction and how much I made on that transaction. So once again, going back to the point, this is very, very powerful in terms of tiered visibility and audit capability and tracing. So if I had lot numbers on a particular item and I needed to see it and I wanted to do some traceability on what invoices went out from that, I don't have to go right a custom thing in SQL. I can come into a report, look at every transaction that item's been on, filter by lot number. Very powerful, very powerful. So that's about all I had on reports. I'm going to take 30 seconds now and pause, let people put questions in Q&A if you have any on the specific reports, and give everybody a minute to digest before we move into our last topic, which is safe searches. Okay, excellent. So back to our PowerPoint for our last slide. The third pillar of what makes up NetSuite on a foundational standpoint are what's called safe searches. Safe searches function similar to reports in that it's data analytics. However, a safe search is a much more specific query that allows you to put in sort of contextual questions. So this is when, if you're used to running reports with, let's say, case statements, or you want 10 or 15 different lines of criteria more than just a few simple filters. Safe searches are really where you go from reporting into data queries and really take your analysis to the next level. The thing that's great about this is that, once again, you can run specific queries, you could do much more advanced data analytics, and you can build them from, you can build custom reports and custom searches straight from the tool in the system. It's click, not code, once again, and I know I say that a lot, but it is my favorite thing about NetSuite, is that you don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to know how to code. You don't have to know how to write SQL in order to even do safe searches, which give you the engine to do much more advanced queries. The other nice thing about safe searches is how individually tailored they can be. So when I look at a safe search as an individual user, when I'm a sales rep, for example, and I want to put some data together that allows me to figure out what leads I have in a particular region that haven't been contacted in 3 months, or that have sent an email to me, I can build those safe searches myself. I don't need to go to my admins. I don't need to go to a dedicated reporting team and request a query. You can set this up so that your individual employees, your individual end users, can run their queries themselves. And so that really gives people the power to build the system to run their jobs more efficiently. It saves other members of your organization time, saves your admins time, because instead of spending all day, every day building things from scratch, all you have to do is be an advisor to your end users on how to generate these things. So very powerful, very simple to use. And I'm going to dive into the demo to show you how. So coming back to NetSuite, I'm going to take a look at some safe searches. So out of the box in NetSuite, there are a number of safe searches. Now, if we start looking at some of these, you can see there are a number of different ones here out of the box. There's probably 1,000 in this particular demo account. So I'm going to go and I'm going to use sales. I'm going to look at a sales leads thing. So if I come down here and I look at, let's say, my opportunities, I don't have any opportunities in the system that are set up for me. So the question then is, well, how do I change that? How do I see all of the leads? Well, so when I edit a particular search, you can see that there's criteria. Now, a criteria is what you think it is. It's what is the filter on this? What am I looking for? So for this particular search, I'm going to change the criteria. And I'm going to say that it's anyone in the system. Now, if I also come here, this is results. So this is what information am I going to want to see? So as opposed to reports where I just click and drag and put in a column and it says this, I have the ability on my results to show a lot of different information, right? Are there any open action items with this particular opportunity, right? Is it related to a particular product line, right? I can do join fields. So I can pull fields from items. I can pull fields from the customer record, right? So the primary contact, right? What is the primary contact's role? And again, you see here through this user interface that I'm looking at, this is all clicking. I'm not writing any SQL. I'm not writing any code to make this work. I can. NetSuite does have the power with these summary type functions and formulas that if you are a more advanced user, if you are a SQL user, if you're used to running very complex queries, you can take save searches and build them into these really powerful, insane analytics tools. But from a day-to-day basis, if you're talking about something that an individual user can make to make their lives better and to take work off of admins, save searches are very powerful. Now, when I preview this, you can see that when I set it to everyone, it's coming in here. It's giving me the role. There are no action items, right? There's no classes. What's my probability? What's the customer stage? How much is the projected total? So this is very powerful in terms of a tool to get different data and different analytics. And again, there's a lot of these in the system, right? So if I wanted to look at a contacts without sales activity in the last week. So who in my system has no one logged a phone call against on a potential opportunity, right? So this is a great to-do list for sales reps. I've got, I'm going to show you guys one or two others. Total weight of purchase orders is a good one if there's any data in here. There's not, my apologies. Let's look at open purchase orders. So these are all my purchase orders that have not been received. And you can see that this is a little bit of a different one. It's got some different formatting to it. And so if I look at the search and I look at the results column and the display columns, you'll see some different information in here than there was previously. But again, you can also see that this has got more criteria information in it. Now, the other nice thing about these is your ability to put save searches on dashboards. So if I come back to a dashboard, and I'm actually going to switch role to my CFO. The dashboard, what you see here, these KPIs, these lovely visuals and all this other information, these are all based on save searches. So if I wanted to look at my COGS, right, this KPI, I can run a trend graph on. I can look at my current bank balance, and this will take me to my trial balance. And this is all driven by save search results. So this is very powerful in the fact that you can put all of this information on your dashboards and visualize the information. So if you have reminders you want to set, such as payments and purchase orders, those are built off of save searches. Revenues, right? This period versus last period threshold, these are based on save searches. So the capability in the tool really gives you a lot that you can do with it. including going into something called Suite Analytics. And we're not going to spend any time on Suite Analytics today. So if people do want more information on how Save Searches can drive Suite Analytics, which is much more of a visual building tool, let marketing let us know in the surveys that we send out after the call, and we'd be happy to set up another webinar on that. So that's all that I had for my presentation in terms of the demo. So once again, as Mike discussed earlier, there is an attendee offer for a free consultation. And now I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to take a look at the Q&A.
Yeah, I just wanted to see, Randy, if you could see the questions. If not, I can bring them forward.
So
can you see in the chat about how do you get a report on standard cost and all that from Sonny Cortez and Angela Acosta? Or
yeah, so I'll take a look at some of these.
Yeah, go ahead.
So some of these questions are a little bit more detailed. And so for some of these questions, it might be better for you guys to reach out to us. But if we take a look here, so one of these things, are all segments mandatory? So this is a great question. Segments are not mandatory unless you designate them that way. So you do have the capability to make segments mandatory at a form level or at the system level, which means that if you say as an organization, we do want a department, right, a cost center, a profit center, and a location on every transaction, you have that functionality to do it from an organization level. Or if you want a specific transaction, so on journal entries, we want departments and classes mandatory, but not on sales transactions, or vice versa. So let's say we're doing a journal entry for balance sheet and we don't need them, but we do want them on all invoices. You have that flexibility. Does NetSuite have multiple sets of books, like actual versus tax? So NetSuite does have a multi-book functionality. Multi-book was designed primarily for multiple country business and accounting regulations. So if we look at, let's say, financial reports from India versus the US, there are different accounts which are considered part of GAAP or non-GAAP. So multi-book is a really powerful advanced tool that gives you the capability to map certain accounts to other accounts. In terms of your question of actual versus tax, that might be something a little separate that you might want to reach out and we can clarify that and talk a little more on. But yes, NetSuite does have the capacity to run multiple sets of accounting books within a single environment.
And I'll just follow that up. If we don't get to your question here, we will follow up. It may not be Randy, it'll be somebody will follow up. No strings attached. We want to make sure we get all of your questions answered as you've asked them. So feel free to pick and choose, Randy, if there's any more you can go. We still have about 10 minutes left. So if there's one that you need to show, but
so let's talk about how many segments and tiers of segments can NetSuite support? So this is a question we can answer here. So out of the box, NetSuite segments, you can do 75 locations, give or take. You can do over 100 in your classes, over 100 in your departments. And in terms of tiers, you can have all sorts of different parent-child relationships in your tier and in your segment list. So let's say that when we looked in our example, we saw we had beverages and we had candy. Well, let's say that I had different brands of candy bars and different brands of soda. So for example, we have beverages. Under beverages, we have Coke and Pepsi. Under Coke and Pepsi, we can have vanilla Coke, Cherry Coke, Diet Coke, 2% Diet Coke. And we can keep building those tiers down. So it really gives you a lot of power in terms of how you can use segments from a top-down perspective to give you all sorts of inventory visibility and product profitability from your segments. So I've done things with NetSuite segments that are very interesting. Way back in the day, pre micro vertical bundles, we used to use segments for everything. So in the nonprofit space, fund balancing, you can build funds and programs into your class segment for all sorts of interesting things. You can build each individual project that your organization might have, if your services organization, into your segments. So it's pretty much sky's the limit until you get to overloading the system with data, which is going to happen with any ERP system. Let's take a look at some of these other ones. What is representing entities? So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by entities in this question. If you're talking about customers, then, when you're doing a transaction, you can choose a specific customer. If you want to book a journal entry line to a customer, you can do that. NetSuite has a lot of different things that could represent what you mean by an entity. So hopefully that helped answer your question. Then I do have a question here about a year-over-year comparison P&L. That's one that I probably don't have time to answer on this particular meeting. If you would like to sort of get some help on that and reach out to us on the sales side, please feel free, and we can see if we can help you out in that regard. But that's definitely one I'm not going to have the on the call. So real quick, we see segment versus class. Segments represent multiple different values: department, class, location. Those are all segments. Class is just a type of segment, and again, usually it's set up to represent the classic profit center when you're looking at your financials. Safe search security. Can you lock individual users into only seeing data for their department or location? Absolutely. There are a number of different ways that you can do user-based security and restrictions, from what their role can see to what that individual employee can see to a specific dedicated audience on the safe search. So you can create safe searches that are private, so only you can see them. You can dedicate a particular audience, so only a couple of different employees or a couple of different emails have access to. So there's a lot of different ways to limit who has access to what data in the system. All right. Do we have any questions in chat? Yes. Okay. So there's a couple of questions in chat as well. Can safe searches be? Oh, let's take a look here. Can you drill into reports down to the JE and support for the JE? Yes, you can. Dual currency on journal entries. Dual currency is supported. NetSuite has the flexibility to have a foreign currency amount, or entering in the different currency exchange rate when you're doing journal entries, expense reports, and other things like that. So that's pretty easy. Can I rename and or restructure GL accounts? Yes, you can rename them. Restructuring them is a bit more difficult. It is doable, but if that's something that you need, I highly recommend reaching out to us and setting up some sort of a discovery call to figure out what the lift on that might be. Because depending on what we want to restructure in the GL, because pieces are all built on top of each other, If you're changing sort of the bottom piece, the foundation, which is the GL, it might have cascading impacts. So while it can be done, it is something that you want to evaluate before you just go ahead and start doing it. How do you show in a report only those items that have activity? So it depends on the report. Most of the time that's by setting the date range. So if you're looking within a particular date range, if an item's had activity within that date range, it will usually show up on that report. There are other filters and other customizations that can be done to help with that. But it is possible. So you get a report on standard cost versus raw materials landed cost. So that's the standard cost versus raw materials landed cost. That's probably one of the manufacturing specific reports. So it would depend on what edition of NetSuite you are and what functionality you have. But there are some out of the box reports on viewing inventory versus raw materials. So if that's a particular report, you know, once again, I'm going to deflect that, you know, we've only got a couple minutes left. I don't really have time to go through all of that. So if you want to reach out, that's something we can certainly discuss. Is there an integration with ADP? There are some partners we have that do integrations with ADP. We have done integrations with ADP. So if that's something that you're interested in, we can absolutely help with that. And yes, NetSuite is able to be integrated with ADP. So I think we've got time for one more, right, Mike?
Yep.
Chef,
sorry, I
one
went
more?
mute. My dog is going crazy in the background. He had a question, but I can't understand what it is. So I'll have to get back to you on that. Sorry about that.
All right. So let's see. I think we have one more. Can we automate allocations? There are different options for automating transactions in the system. That's a very broad question. There are ways to automate a lot of different pieces of functionality, you know, and around allocations. If you're talking, you know, and when you look at allocations, you start talking about statistical accounts versus dynamic, you know, with dynamic information in them versus standard monthly allocations versus recurring journal entries. So there are a lot of different pieces that we can automate moving forward. So if you are interested in that, that's something I'd want to gather more information on because there's so many different ways to do automations and so many different types of allocations I've done over the years in terms of automation, that's really one that I need to have a nice conversation with you to figure out what it is you're looking for.
Wonderful. I think we're gonna go ahead and give everyone back. Oh, we're at plus 4 seconds over. So nicely done, Randy. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have additional questions, feel free to send them to the address I sent in the chat. It's sales@getgsi.com. And we will make this video available at the end of the day on our YouTube channel. And everyone who attended will have a link to that. So you can share it, or if you need to rehear something. But we definitely want to make sure you have all the information in your hands. On behalf of the marketing department, we're thrilled you joined us. I'm sure Randy's pretty happy too. So
yeah,
thanks again for listening
to me. I like Zoom because no one can throw tomatoes at me when I'm not doing a good job. So
that's
appreciate everyone joining, and hopefully I gave you some great information.
Awesome. And yes, we will be be presenting more NetSuite webinars in the future. So stay tuned, and thanks again, everybody. Have a great, safe, and enjoyable afternoon. Thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye.